Hello, I am taking on the challenge to beat every playable Nintendo published game. Welcome to the next episode. The next game is Game & Watch Donkey Kong Jr. Nintendo wasted no time getting Donkey Kong Jr. to the Game & Watch series after the launch of the arcade game. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this was planned before the arcade game had even launched. Now, you might expect this one to have been part of the multi-screen series, since that's the series we last left off on, but this was actually the first game in a new series that ran parallel to the multi-screen series. This new series was creatively named the New Widescreen Series. Guess Nintendo was doing this whole new thing long before New Super Mario Bros. And the new 3DS. This series didn't see quite as many frequent releases as some of the others, but it still had a total of 8 units. Looking into what was actually different about this series, it appears the big change was that it used a new CPU to allow for more complex games. This new CPU was actually first implemented with the multi-screen series, so in a way, this series could probably just be seen as a continuation of the regular widescreen series, just with the hardware upgrades that had been introduced since the launch of the most recent widescreen game. This series also features the new life refresh mechanics from the multi-screen series, so my new goal was to get to 300 points in each game mode. The themes of this one are pretty similar to the arcade game it is based on. Mario has Donkey Kong captured in the cage again, and you play as Donkey Kong Jr. trying to rescue his papa. Mario looks particularly funny in this one, as he just sits still and stares blankly forward. While you're still in the jungle and can climb on the vines, they don't play nearly as much of a role in this one as they did in the arcade game. Instead of being one of the primary ways to move, the vines mostly serve as a safe spot to hide in while the Snapjaws move below you. Speaking of, this level features both the Snapjaws and the Nitpickers from the arcade game. They don't have any sort of AI though, and they just move through a preset pattern. This doesn't make them easy to dodge though, as you can get stuck in some pretty tricky situations. The Snapjaws are especially tough near the end of the stage, since there are no vines to hide on. You can jump over them, but when a bunch of them come at once, I found that jumping over one Snapjaw would often result in me just landing in the jaws of the next one. There's a piece of fruit you can use to take out some of the enemies, although this serves more as a way to earn extra points rather than a way to clear out enemies, since they'll just respawn soon anyway. The last big thing in this game is that to rescue Donkey Kong, you have to grab a key that is swinging back and forth at the top left of the stage. To do this, you have to enter a pretty complex input. Well, complex for a Game & Watch game at least. If you press left by itself, you'll run off the edge and lose a life. And if you press just jump, you'll only do a short hop above you. To actually jump towards the key, you have to press both the jump button and the left button at the same time. This may seem simple, but for some reason, I would occasionally mess up this input and instead jump straight upwards and end up landing straight into a Snapjaw. Similar to the crane in Game & Watch Donkey Kong, you have to time your jump when the key is swinging to the far left, otherwise you will miss and lose a life. Once you successfully grab the key, Junior unlocks the cage. Well, you actually only unlock 1/4 of the cage for some reason. After doing this, you are sent back to the start, and it's time to make the trip once again. After you unlock all 4 parts of the cage, Donkey Kong is free and happily smiles at the camera. This only lasts for a moment though, as he is suddenly trapped again, and it is back to square one. There's quite a few ways to earn points in this one. The simplest way is to jump over a Snapjaw. This doesn't give you that many points though, and it's not really worth it once they start grouping up in lines. Generally, I prefer to just play it safe and hold on to the vines. As mentioned before, you can also get points for knocking a fruit onto the enemies. The points rack up if you kill more than one enemy with a single fruit, but once you knock the fruit down, it won't respawn until you've either grabbed the key or lost a life. The biggest way to earn points in this one is to grab the key. You earn a variable amount of points each time you unlock a part of the cage, depending on how fast you are able to make the trip. And you earn a ton of extra points once you clear the 4th lock and rescue Donkey Kong. When I initially played, my target was just to rescue Donkey Kong, and I started with Game Mode A. This game was surprisingly tough. It throws so many Snapjaws at you, and as the game progresses, they start to move really fast. It took me quite a few tries to even rescue Donkey Kong. Eventually though, I got it, and I ended up rescuing him a total of 3 times in one run, ending the run with a total of 230 points. After this, I switched to Game Mode B. This one was definitely harder. In particular, it seemed like there were a lot more nitpickers flying around, which made it much less safe to hide out in the vines. That being said, since my goal was to only rescue Donkey Kong, I still managed to make it on my first try, and lost my last life at 108 points. Like many of these Game & Watch games lately, I decided to return to this one and earn 300 points in both game modes and see the life refresh. This turned out to be pretty tough. Honestly, I think this Game & Watch is one of the harder ones out there. I'm glad I returned to it though, as it forced me to engage more with its mechanics and actually learn how to play the game properly. One simple thing I found out during this revisit was that there was a spot on the far right vines that was far more safe than I initially thought, which was essential to traversing through the stage as things got more difficult. Finally, at around 9 attempts, I managed to get 300 points in Game Mode A, and I moved on to Game Mode B. This one still took quite a few tries, but I got to 300 a little quicker this time around, probably due just to how much better I got at the game during my time with Game Mode A. Finally, Game & Watch Donkey Kong Jr. was complete. On to the review. Phew, this one was tough, but I definitely still enjoyed it. It's nice to see the Game & Watch games get more complicated with the more advanced processor. That being said, I can't help but wish this was a multi-screen game, since the extra space would have given it a bit more variety. As it is right now, there's too little variety for a game where the objective is to navigate through a stage. I gave the game a 6 out of 10. Thanks for watching the video. If you want to see more of these in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you won't miss out on the next one. Also leave a like if you enjoyed it, since it'll help the channel grow and motivate me to continue this series. I hope I will see you in the next step of my quest to beat every Nintendo game.